What is up, everybody? What is going on? Welcome to the Suit Up Geek Fix podcast. Today, the journey to the Batman begins. This is our part one preview here, where we're going to be breaking down the Mask of the Phantasm against Batman Year One. Guys, if you're new to the channel, smash that subscribe button. Don't miss any of our Batman content coming up. Movie drafts, movie trivia, you name it, it's all here. Like, subscribe, comment if you're watching us live. Joining me, as always, my co-host, he is Loretto. He is at Marcellus Durden on Twitter. What's up, love?
Hello. Good afternoon. Had a bad case of the Mondays, but I made it barely on time. Ready to talk shop, man. Bruce Wayne.
Love it, love it, love it. Oh, yeah, we're celebrating Bruce Wayne tonight. Also joining us is our new movie trivia champ, our latest rom-com trivia champion right there. He is Matt, at Matt Wyatt, 651 on Twitter. What's up, Matt?
Yeah, man, I'm so glad to be back on and talking about Batman, the journey to the Matt Reeves' Batman film. I'm so excited to talk about it.
And then last but not least, he is Formal at the Formal Review. What's up, Formal?
What's up? Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk Batman.
Let's go. Let's just jump right into Mask of the Phantasm, man. What a magnificent film, top to bottom. A couple of weeks ago, Robert Pattinson compared the Batman's focus on the character's inner psyche to that 1993 animated classic, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. We're going to talk just general impressions. We're going to just kind of reminisce about some of our favorite moments and, break down how this is going to impact the Batman. But for anyone who, like me, who grew up to Batman the animated series, man, I'm sure you did. Like this movie holds a truly special place in my heart. For me, Mask of the Phantasm is the single greatest Batman story ever told. On the surface, the tone, the visuals is amazing with those dark gothic tones, man. But when you dig deeper, like this is all about Bruce's journey of self-discovery. This is a movie that's through and through a tragedy. Like when you think of Batman the animated series, like this is dark. This is a really truly dark film. It's one that like peels back the layers of Batman, that sacrifice he has to make to come face to face and accept his true destiny. There's so much to talk about here. I'm going to throw it to Formal first, man. Formal, what's your general impressions of Mask of the Phantasm?
I mean, similar to what you were saying, obviously, my thing with Batman the Animated Series, I think, this film, even though it's not spoken up as much, it's the epitome of what a film noir is, it has to do with crime, murder, femme fatale, all of that aspects of what most people look at live action as film noir. This is, but put into a comic book movie sense. And frankly, I echo pretty much everything that you just said about it. I love it. I think personally it is the best Batman film. And I say that as looking into the Batman character like you already went into. And I won't repeat everything. But basically, yeah, that's how I view this story. And the more I rewatch it, really just shows how impactful it is and how little details in there that really help the overall mystery of the story, even knowing the the result of the film and who is what. You still see little things here and there that really actually show how much the film really dives into the idea of what a mystery film it is, and also how much Batman actually is a detective, which is something that honestly, when it comes to live action versions of the character, we have really yet to be seen.
Yeah. This is through and through a Bruce Wayne movie. This is a deep dive into Bruce Wayne, unlike we have seen in a lot of live action films. What about you, Matt? What's your general impressions of Mask of the Phantasm?
Yeah, I went back and rewatched it again for the second time, and then I enjoyed it a lot more on the second watch. I did grow up on watching the Batman animated series, and I ended up loving the character. I mean, I just love the fact that they dived in deep into his psyche. This is definitely a character study of why he's Batman and why he feels like he needs to go up against the criminals and the corrupt, and because after everything that happened to Bruce, because when Bruce's parents were murdered right in front of him, it changed everything. This is when Bruce died in that alley and Batman was born, and he needs to find a way to strike them as for the fear and the symbolism of the bat is what can do it. Because when he tries to go off and fight criminals in his regular like street clothes and his ski mask, it didn't do anything. So he had to find another solution to strike fear to the criminals, and I just loved everything about that. And I echo what what Formal and Dives have said. I mean, and I love how they've introduced this new character called Armana, which, spoiler alert, she's the Phantasm. They both have a similar tragedy. I mean, they were both are after the same thing, except that it's personal. It was more personal, and she wants to go after her for having her own petty revenge. And I think this is a great film.
My bad, I was muted. What's your thoughts on Phantasm, Lo?
Just to double check though, is this only first impressions, or am I linking this to Batman already?
We were gonna go into that a little bit later, but you can just segue into that if you want.
Yeah, definitely. Just wanted to, I didn't want to jump the gun. But ultimately, or I mean, initially, I want to say, I think this film, especially in 1993 when they released it in theaters, surprisingly, it's like, who was this film for? And it's just, it's such a disservice to the character for how, when you start this film, you see Bugs Bunny chewing on his carrot next to the WB logo. And you got to imagine, in 1993, kids took their parents, oh, hey, it's a Batman cartoon. But really, funnily enough, especially compared to the animated series, they pretty much did everything they couldn't do in the series and kind of put it here. And it's dark. It's a mobster gangster tale. It explores Bruce's romance. And we see him like locking lips pretty heavily on screen with this lady. And it's just like, it's funny because it's like, you know, adults usually don't tend to veer towards cartoons. But, you know, I think this is one of the first films to kind of cross that line where it's like, it's for adults and it's probably more so for older kids than the smaller kids. And maybe that's why little kid Gabe fell asleep or whatever, didn't like it. Shout out to Gabe, who has his own pod going on right now. But I love you, Gabe. With all that nonsense out of the way, I just wanted to touch on that because I feel like this film was so mismarketed. But at the same time, I look at it and I'm like, how do you market this film? And then going to what I love about this film, it takes me to one scene in particular because I did grow up with this like you, Dibes. I saw it when I was little and I didn't really understand it till I got older, like more in my teenage years. But Bruce Wayne in the rain at his parents' grave and seeking justification from his dead parents, like what do I do? And I made this vow to rid Gotham of crime, but I didn't count on being happy. Like that particular quote, I didn't count on being happy, and he's like pounding his fist on the grave. That is such the moral conflict of Bruce Wayne is just at its best right there. None of the movies have touched on that like this film has, and it's amazing that, you know, almost 40 years ago, that still holds true. So that's what struck me about this film, that moral conflict. And also, I think what we're going to see in the Batman is, I think what both films, Year One and Mask of the Phantasm, does well is the conflict of the cops and the media against Batman. Very early in Mask of Phantasm, I believe his name is Arthur, Councilman Arthur. He was saying how, like, oh, he crossed the line because one of the mobsters got killed and it got pinned on Batman. And he was like, you know, this vigilantism must stop. You know, Batman's crossed the line. He's gone too far. And it's like that's the interesting thing about Batman. It's like they love you when they need you, but then they easily will turn against you. And I think that's a very interesting aspect about Batman. So,
well, yeah, there's a quote in The Dark Knight and in the interrogation scene with Heath Ledger's Joker. It's like, hey, they need you now, but when they don't, they'll cast you out. Which that was a great line in that movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities here between Mask of the Phantasm and Batman Year One. Like before you got Joker, before you got Two-Face, before you got everyone else, you had the mob, the mafia. That was the true villains of Batman. You know, at the start. Let's just jump into favorite moments real quick, and then we'll get into the Batman. Matt, what is your favorite moment of Mask of the Phantasm?
Oh yeah, my favorite scene is the cemetery when Bruce is so very conflicted and before he dons the cape of Batman, and just how devastated he is, and he doesn't know if he's doing the right thing. He doesn't know if he is doing what's right, honoring their memories and all that. That's just one of my favorite scenes of the movie. Period.
What about you, Formal?
So I mean, I think my favorite scene is the clip that the image that we have right here. That scene, you don't even see him actually as Batman. All you see him like putting on the the cowl, and then you just see his eyes and then him walking away. One,
Yeah.
that's just such a great image, but also like how in that moment it's like he's donning the Batman aspect to him kind of walking off, but it's like how the music kind of fades down and kind of sounds more melancholy than like as it was epic like 5 seconds before. It's actually showing like really how him becoming Batman is like a tragedy. It wasn't a good thing that he was becoming Batman. Obviously what the good thing was getting married to Andrea and everything, but that didn't happen. And that's also, I love that also the cemetery scene as well, but I didn't want to say that one too.
Those are all awesome. And you know, shout out to Alfred when he sees like his like reaction the first time. He's like, like
startled.
literally shits his pants when that happened. Awesome moment there. But mine is like a little weird. I think that scene where it's at the very end, and Andrea Beaumont's like on the boat, and the guy asks her, "Are you alone, ma'am?" And she goes, "I am." And I always found this movie to be have such an interesting parallel between Batman and her character for me. Like those two, you know, you see kind of Bruce using the murder of his parents as a way to become this hero. And then you see Andrea like losing her father and leading her to becoming this, you know, take that lethal approach and becoming the Phantasm. I think Andrea Beaumont's like legit one of the most underrated anti-heroes in, you know, Batman villain history, man. This is a character that Bruce was ready to, you know, drop on a dime and marry. You know, this is just a tragic catalyst for Bruce accepting his destiny as Batman. And I don't think people talk about it enough, man. Like, this is such an epic, underrated character. And, you know, kudos to the Phantasm. You know, it didn't come from the comics. It was original at the time. Like, you look at now, like, everything's like copy and paste, top to bottom. I respect this character so much. Andrea Beaumont's, that just parallel between her and Bruce is awesome. Just freaking awesome. Let's deep dive into how this impacts the Batman. Go ahead, Formal.
Well, like I think like the biggest thing obviously has to do with the psyche of what Batman is, and I mean you guys have touched on it already. I mean I think it was at the first DC fandom when like they first revealed the trailer and whatnot, like how Matt Reeves basically said that that's one of the biggest things that like they're going to be looking into is the psyche. And like I think it was maybe an interview short after that, and I couldn't remember what it was when we did the 2021 movie episode, but it's a Batman's ego, Batman Ego, which is like another comic book source material that he said is going to be highly a very big inspiration for his film, which is one that like really looks at the duality of Bruce versus Batman. And essentially, obviously, Batman is this character of like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde almost, but what keeps him from going full Mr. Hyde is the humanity that he has. And that's something that hasn't really been shown so much in regard to like the live actions ones, especially. Like there's been some back and forth with it when it comes to like, oh yeah, will he have a love life with Rachel Dawes or whatever, but then it's not really it's not as delved into as much because it's just, I guess, trying to fix the crime aspects. It's not a look into what does it mean really? What's the sacrifice that he's making? What is the tragedy of he's not going to be happy? He's going to be living in this world where he honestly thinks about his parents' death every single day, that he essentially puts on the mask because that's what really makes him Batman. That's the thing that drove him. And going into like kind of what you were saying already, Dives, about Andrea Beaumont, I agree 100% with that, because again, the tragedy of their characters is that really they should be together, and that how like their stories are just so aligned. I think Matt mentioned it earlier as well, is that like you would think that they're the perfect couple, even if the romance like didn't work out. Like their stories are almost exactly the same, of death of parents, going into essentially vigilantism, except one is willing to kill and the other one isn't. And I think that we obviously, I don't think we're gonna get like an Andrea Beaumont character so much in the live action, but I think that whole idea of the psyche of what Bruce and Batman, what does that mean? Because I mean, we've seen it in the trailers of the Riddler really kind of messing with his mind. We see him being in this turmoil, and I think that if Matt Reeves says that that's one of the biggest, I guess, inspirations for this, I think there's a lot of inspiration to come from the Phantasm, because it's one of the films that has delved into that really well since it first came out back in 92, 93.
Yeah, you stole everything I was going to say about how Phantasm. That's really what it is. Like, this is a story that views Batman not as something noble, but something as truly tragic. And I think that is a no-brainer home run from Matt Reeves. I think he's going to knock that out of the park. I'm going to throw it to you, Matt. How does this impact the Batman?
Yeah, I agreed on everything that Formal says. I echo what he's saying, because you're exploring the psyche of the character, and it's definitely going to show you him going through his darkness and his demons and how he has to conquer them in order to protect this whole city and all the corruption. And what you saw in this trailer for the Batman movie, you start to see that the Riddler is trying to exploit everyone involved in the whole corruption, including the Wayne family, which that's something we haven't got a chance to explore if I'm not mistaken. But I think that Robert Pattinson is definitely going to embody the character of the Batman and give us a character. It's definitely going to become more of a character study. That's something we have not seen in live action before, and I'm excited to see what's going to come to the play.
What about you, Love?
Yeah, I actually wanted to piggyback on Formal a little bit, just because I think what's fascinating is that within this film, for the first time, we see him question himself. There's a scene right before the cemetery scene where he's like, what am I still doing this for? And he's like looking into the mirror, and then he has that flashback at the cemetery with Andrea. And what's interesting is, I think, because he mentions at his parents' grave, he mentions that when he's getting ready to marry her, and he's feeling like he wants to give this up, he mentions to his parents at the grave, like, it doesn't hurt so much anymore. Like, I'm sorry, like, and it's kind of piggyback on what I said earlier, but I just find that interesting, and I think that's something that Robert Pattinson is going to have to deal with. Where's he going to find his drive? Because it almost seems like the tragedy of his romance with Andrea is what pushed that Bruce Wayne in that universe forward. And I think it's going to be interesting to see Robert Pattinson find, like, what else motivates him besides his parents' death, because there's always more to it. And also, I think the brutality of what we've seen so far in the trailers and the teaser, it's like, that's definitely him kind of getting a little bit too far, going too far down that path of vengeance. And I think at some point he's definitely going to have a moment of clarity, I think. And I think that's going to be really interesting to look at.
And it looks like he looks like he wants to take all of his anger out on the criminals of all the tragedy that he had to go through in his life.
Yep, 100%. That's really exciting. I'm really excited to really deep dive into that, especially the Bruce Wayne aspect, that inner psyche aspect. Should we do grades, like grade out of 10, real quick? We'll just run it down. Like, Loretto, any final thoughts and grades on Mask of the Phantasm?
Yeah, really quick, because we misconstrued what my favorite scene was. As much as I remember the cemetery scene the most, my favorite moment actually was when the cops chase him down, and it really humanized Batman for me. Like, that was the first time, especially watching the animated series, like, that was the first time we've seen him so vulnerable, and he gets blown up, and his mask is falling off, he loses his belt, his cape, and he's like literally bloody and like limping into the car as Andrea takes him to safety. But I just thought that was really cool, especially from like in that time period. Like, I'm not that Michael Keaton was untouchable, but more or less, he never really faced that type of struggle that we saw in Mask of Phantasm. So that's something that I loved, and honestly, it's one of my favorite Batman stories ever. I agree with everything you guys have said so far. This is easily I think I'm gonna give it a 10, guys. I think I'm gonna give it a 10.
Wow.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked everything about this movie, and I mean, like on the second watch, and just seeing the continuation of the tying in the continuity to the Batman animated series. I love the voice performance, and Kevin Conroy will always be the best voice Batman of all time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just love to see him seeing through the struggle, and especially his new love interest, who has a lot of things in common, that they both have suffered through the same thing, except that they have different ideology of how they want to handle things. And like you said, that Phantasm is a new original character that was never been discussed and never been shown on screen before, and I think that was really interesting. So I'm going to give this thing an 8.5.
What about you, Formal?
So I'm yeah, I like the movie a lot, obviously. But I think like I also want to give a shout out to another few like scenes. Like one of my favorite scenes also is like the honestly, in my opinion, one of the biggest Batman burns I've ever heard, and I still like laugh at it to this day. Is like when Batman is like investigating Andrea, he goes, "You still follow your dad's orders?" And she goes, "The way I see it, the only one who in the room controlled by his parents is you." And I just love that as just a burn on Batman, but while it also being true. And I agree with Lo like 100% when it comes to that scene as well. I think that like it definitely humanizes the character a lot more than we've seen in the live action. And I'll try to keep it short. This is something that is just really great all around, from the music. It has a gothic score, and it's really something that really wasn't touched on. And by touched on, I mean a little bit, and up until potentially like Batman Begins a little bit. And I mean, for me, like I would say it's a 10 just because I've watched it so many times and I noticed little things. And I noticed something like, I think not this rewatch, but the rewatch that I already like did toward the end of last year. And it's what I was going into how it deals with the mystery and little details, like the person who does the voice of the Phantasm is actually the same person who does the voice of Andrea's father. So It's how deep that it dives into that whole idea of a misdirection to actually try to make you think, oh, it's definitely not Andrea. So I think like it's really does a really great job on showing Batman as the world's greatest detective again, which isn't something that's shown really at all in any other live action bit.
That's the single biggest reason why I'm so excited for the Batman. Like, we're finally getting live action world's greatest detective on the big screen. And this is where it started. And it just kind of just stopped, to be honest. But this was just a great film, top to bottom. This is a 10 for me. I would argue this is in my top 3 Batman movies of all time. This movie, just from the jump, the music, the tone, my wife never saw this before. We were watching it this morning, and like that even brought her attention. She's like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, it is just such a beautiful yet tragic story here about Batman. There's so many motifs here. You nailed it, Matt. Like, this is where Batman, like, it started with Batman wanting to strike fear into his enemies. And I just love every single second of this film, which means we are going to roll on to our next film here. And that is Batman Year One. Let's like deep dive into Batman Year One just a little bit. Matt Reeves said a year ago that the Batman is not an origin tale. We're not doing, is in quotes, we're not doing anything, any particular storyline. Year One is one of the many comic books that I love. We're not doing Year One. It's just exciting to be focused very specifically on a tale that is defining for Batman and very personal to him. Obviously, we're not doing an origin tale or anything like that. We're doing a story that is definitely Batman, though, and trying to tell a story that's emotional and yet really about him being the world's greatest detective and all the things that, for me, since I was a kid, made me love Batman. And this is an interesting film. Let's just jump right into general impressions. Go ahead. I will throw it to you, Matt. What was your general impressions of Batman Year One?
Well, yeah, I mean, my general impression is that we get to explore 2 characters story arc. We get to explore more of the character study of Jim Gordon, and where he started and why he's transferred over to Gotham PD. He's a war veteran. He's been through a lot, and he has a pregnant wife that he has, and you see him exploring the corruption of the Gotham PD and how badly has it gotten. But he was just playing more of the long game and not try to take it into his own hands like Bruce Wayne has been doing. I love the whole aspect of the character narration, which that was an interesting that I haven't seen before. I mean, it kind of felt like a Sin City style, where every character narrates their own story, which that was interesting. And and we definitely get to explore Bruce Wayne's side of the story, exploring the transformation of him becoming the Batman, where now he's coming home to Gotham after his long absence from the city, and then he's been training for years, and you start to learn about the psyche of the character, kind of like the Mask of the Phantasm, and you see the full transformation of him becoming the Batman that we know and love. And it's definitely, I love the style of the detective noir style, and it's just not focusing on these big Batman's rogues gallery. This is all about taking down the criminals and the corrupt and the mob, which that was an interesting take.
What about you, Formal?
I think that this film is very loyal to the source material, and that is a good and a bad thing, I think. And I can get into that in a little bit, but I agree with, I do like how it shows the the contrast between Jim Gordon and Bruce Wayne. I think that was done really, really well. And it actually, similar to what I said earlier about the Andrea Batman back and forth, this does a very similar thing that's very much like Heat in a way, with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. And honestly, like, this movie obviously came out after Batman Begins and after, if I remember correctly, after The Dark Knight. And you see a lot of similarities there, but obviously those two movies were based on this original comic. So you can see a lot of similarities there. And I agree with when it comes to the Sin City aspect, and I think that was an interesting choice to go with. And it makes sense that it's like Sin City, like with Frank Miller writing it. So I think there are a lot of really great things in this, but it doesn't hit everything. But I'll be positive for right now.
Right now we're just talking about general impressions of Batman Year One. Lo, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was actually listening while I was away. I just had to step away for a moment. But Matt, I loved how you brought up Sin City, because Year One, the comic, is actually done by Frank Miller, of course. And I was joking with our friend Michael Thomas at Novice Cinephile on Twitter, and I was saying how Batman Year One feels like Sin City starring Bruce Wayne and Lieutenant Gordon. And it's so grimy. It has that noirish first-person narration. And it gets a little like weird, like Selena and that little girl, I guess they were like getting pimped out and stuff like that. And then Lieutenant Gordon's cheating on his wife.
Yeah, and you see that Selena Kyle is an escort, and you see that she now wants to change things and be a cab burglar.
Interesting. I didn't get to go into depth on it earlier, but I wanted to save it for this because it reminded me of Old Town in Sin City. I don't know if you guys remember the film. Rosario Dawson was like, protecting her town. Right. The mob was up in there, and that's then exactly Dwight was like the anti-hero of that, and it reminded me of like Selena and Bruce there, and maybe we might see something like that in the Batman. But yeah, overall though, I'm like you, Formal. I like Year One, but then there's some things I have gripes with. But ultimately, I like how dirty Gotham feels. It 100% feels like an old-timey film noir with undersea, like that crime underworld. The corruption in the police, especially Commissioner Loeb. I think that's something that we might see even more of upcoming. And one last thing is Matt Reeves, I believe at Fandom, he said something like, this is kind of like almost unofficially like Year Two. He's still a new Batman, but he's not like completely a new Batman. So I think it's an era that I don't think any of the films have quite like hit on the head. So that's my first impressions of it.
Yeah, for me, I love how raw and amateurish Batman is in this film. To me, that was a major takeaway. Like he almost accidentally kills a kid on his first outing in the outfit, and literally calls himself an amateur. I really enjoy that. Like this movie is about flawed characters. You know, amongst a ton of corruption, you have Gordon who's cheating on his wife, and you have Batman who's just flawed through and through. So.
He called himself a fucking amateur.
Yeah, there are definitely problems. Like I didn't like how they just rushed Batman's like first appearance. Like that literally, like they didn't get into the costume design. They didn't get into anything. I like the reveal of him seeing the bat fall onto a sculpture of his father. That was pretty neat, but they kind of just rushed things a little bit. But through and through, this film's about Gordon and Batman trying to cement their will, trying to cement their ideologies for the betterment of Gotham. And yeah, obviously the Batman Begins similarities are through and through in this film. And but it's all about Batman and Gordon and that start of that relationship for me. So you kind of nailed it, Loretto. Like going into favorite moments, you stole it for me, just like Formal stole mine for Mask of the Phantasm. I think what my favorite part of year one was the tone of Gotham and that feeling of dread, man. This is a film that I thought did a really good job of like cementing Gotham as this like grimy, super sleazy city that's filled with prostitutes, drugs, corruption, man. It does a really nice job of like highlighting this when Bruce is undercover, you know, exploring the Narrows there. And I thought that like, you know, you see like Gordon and his dealings with the Gotham City Police Department. And Gordon even admits that his job of internal affairs is unforgiving and basically no one likes him. It's a thankless job. And he never gets any respect. Like I love how this film does an amazing job of stacking the odds incredibly high against not only Bruce, but Gordon as well, and making their mission to like rescue Gotham like look that much more ridiculous. Like that is an impossible task that they are taking on. And I had that feeling watching this movie. And I thought that this film did a great job of that. I'm going to throw it right back to you, Loretta. What's your favorite moments from this film?
That's a good question. There's so many good moments for me. Surprisingly, you know, my favorite scene was actually has nothing to do with Bruce Wayne. I loved when Jim Gordon caught up with what's his name, Flass, the corrupt guy that was training him or whatever, and you know they jumped him. They were beating him down with bats, and literally, you know, it's interesting. You usually see revenge happen like a day or two later, or a week later. Like Jim has his eyes shut. He's like bleeding still. He got in his car and had the bat that they beat his ass with, and he goes and tracks Flass down like that night. And I love it. Not only does he beat the shit out of him to like show him like, hey, look, don't fuck with me, all right? But not only that, he leaves him butt naked in the snow. Which again, it's very Frank Miller. It's very like, what the fuck? Like, but I love the message that Gordon sends, and that Jim Gordon, that specific kind of character of Gordon. I'm just it's someone you could root for, and it's someone that's just a badass, and it's just like all about, you know, fighting for what's right. And it's like in a corrupt town like that, you know, and really all the more you're just like, hell yeah, you know, it's a stand up and cheer moment. So that's the one that did it for me.
I'll say this film did it better than Batman Begins. Like Batman Begins was all about you know, Batman and Bruce and, you know, everything else, but like they touched on the Narrows and how corrupt it was. I thought this did it better. I really, truly thought that. What about you, Matt? What's your favorite moment?
It's the same with Loretto. I mean, from Jim Gordon to track down Flask and beating the crap out of him, getting even with them. I mean, he had every chance to want to shoot and kill him and try to get away with it, but he doesn't do that. So he just does a man-to-man, one-on-one fight, and that was badass. And it just shows you how great of a character he is. And he has such a great, rich story that we don't often get to explore in any of the iterations of the Batman. And I thought they did a better job with this. And it just shows, and they showed you the side of Bruce Wayne when he's trying to go down to a town full of prostitutes, and he's taking out a bunch of criminals and pimps at a time, but he screws up. He gets shot. He got a little sloppy on his first day on the job, and it just shows you that he's not perfect. I mean, this is his first time to even do his crime fighting. He did it in his street clothes. I mean, he literally just showed his face in public, which that was something that was not the smart way to go.
And it, like, remember that scene where I think it was Civil War? I could be wrong. Where Captain America's like ripping, a piece of wood apart. Is that Civil War?
Oh no, that was in the scene in Age of Ultron.
Yeah,
Age of Ultron, and you have like Tony Stark's reaction to that. Dude, Bruce Wayne has no powers, and he literally just sweep kicks a tree in half.
Well, to be fair, because you had a bunch of SWAT teams shooting with their assault rifles on the wall until it almost tore apart. So that's what gave him the opportunity to tear down that wood easily because it was halfway chopped into shit.
No, but Matt, there was a training sequence where he literally roundhouse the tree.
But he did roundhouse that brick, that big bricks.
I was like, he literally goes, "I'm not ready," and then he just knocks down, cuts the tree in half with a kick.
And he doesn't have superpowers. Barely has super strength or something.
Oh man, Miyagi-Do would be like, "Damn!" But it was
there you go.
What about you, Formal? What was your take? What's your favorite moments of Batman Year One?
I mean, I echo everything y'all said. I love how gritty like Gotham is. I like how they made that. I like the little moments, honestly, when it comes to just like who Batman is. They obviously do show him out kind of as a detective, not as much as Phantasm, but I think like there was a moment like when I don't remember, but like there were like two unconscious cops in a car, and like they're clearly corrupt, and he goes like, "They're scum, but even scum has families," and then he like takes them out of the car, which is like such a Batman line. It's just like, yeah, they suck, but all right, I gotta save them, and then he does. And it's like little things like that where you notice more and more that he's becoming the Batman that we obviously know and love. I will say my favorite part of the entire movie, though, goes kind of similar to what you guys were saying about Gordon. I really like that, but I really think that it helped a lot was having Bryan Cranston voicing him.
Yeah,
I thought
right.
He honestly. One, I'm surprised he hasn't been Gordon because he definitely looks the part, I would say.
Oh yeah, an actor like Bryan Cranston would have been a perfect choice to play Jim Gordon in live action.
Yeah. So I think like he obviously adds to this kind of like the way he delivers the lines. It's obviously cold, it's obviously mean, and Cranston's voice. I mean, you've seen him obviously in Breaking Bad and even the Godzilla movies for a little bit. His voice really adds a gravitas to this character that even in the Batman the Animated Series, he didn't have that type of gravitas. And same thing even with Gary Oldman's version. It's such a different way to see Gordon, and I really, really like that, which is more than I can say about what's his name? The guy who voiced Batman / Bruce
Ben McKenzie.
Ben McKenzie. Yeah.
Yeah. And fun fact, if you didn't know that, that's the same actor that played Jim Gordon in the Gotham series.
Yep.
Get out of here.
No,
I'm not even joking. I mean, I'm not gonna. My little criticism with the voice acting with Ben McKenzie, I thought his acting was a little bit wooden at times. It wasn't a strong voice performance in my opinion, but Bryan Cranston's voice performance was incredible, and he would have been great in either live action or animation for Jim Gordon.
Dude, I watched every episode of that Gotham show, unfortunately.
I didn't know it at the time when I watched that movie. I didn't know it at the time until I IMDb'd it, and I just like, oh my god, this is the same guy that played Gordon. How crazy is it? How ironic.
That's nuts. Oh, that's great. Matt, favorite moment? Did you do yours?
Oh no, I already brought up the favorite moment.
Loretto, favorite moment. We did our.
I kicked that one off.
All right. We're all set. Let's jump right into how this movie is going to impact the Batman. Let's go right back to you, Formal. Where are you gonna go?
I'm like hesitant to see like how much that this film does, because I see obviously, like I said already, like you see how much it impacts like Batman Begins, and you see where the source material like obviously has all that, but I don't know, because I think that all of the things that I could say about this film I said already about Phantasm. So aside from just like, since this is it's technically year 2, so from a story perspective, we have this, and this is potentially just like background knowledge instead of just like actually, I guess, inspiring the story. So I'm not really sure like how much it will impact, aside from maybe like the gritty Gotham look,
Yeah.
and maybe the type of Gordon that we get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think it will have a little bit of an impact because you got to remember that a while back they announced that they were going to do a Gotham PD that explores the corruption of the Gotham Police Department, which is going to explore more of Jim Gordon, and it's taking place in year one where Batman is still around, and I believe they will see Batman in the show, but not like as a main character. But this is going to be focused more on the centric of Jim Gordon, which that's going to be something that kind of like what Batman Year One did. You know that you had two different character arcs with Jim and Bruce in the same movie, but this one will in live action. This is going to be a separate thing where in the Batman movie you're exploring the psychological character of Bruce Wayne, which is something that we don't always see in the live action Batman. Like Michael Keaton's Batman in the 1989, he was a great Batman, but you don't really know much about him really. He's just doing his own thing in Gotham. Then when you get with Christian Bale, it was more of a Bruce Wayne-centric story in the Dark Knight trilogy. Then when you get Ben Affleck, which Batman in BVS and Justice League, you just see a Batman who is at the end of his career, which in my opinion, I still think he is still the definitive Batman in my opinion. I just wish they would have had him do a solo movie, which it was supposed to be directed by Ben Affleck. And but anyway, it is what it is. But I'm glad that Matt Reeves directed this, and I'm glad that Robin Pattinson was the perfect choice to be casting. Even before he was even confirmed, I always defended this choice because I think he's an incredible actor, and I think he's going to bring it. And Matt Reeves, he's an incredible director. He directed the Apes movies, and I trust them, and I love the entire cast. But also not only when they take inspirations from Year One in Mask of the Phantasm, they're taking inspirations from David Fincher's movies from Zodiac and Seven, which is the murder mystery of finding the serial killer, leaving clues, riddles, which is the Riddler was the perfect choice to have the villain, and Paul Dano is going to be incredible in the film.
That's actually part 2 of our Batman preview next week. Zodiac versus I can't wait to rewatch those films.
I'm just so excited.
I'm so excited. What about you, Lo?
Yeah, man. Honestly, as much as I love Mask of the Phantasm, I think a lot more of Year One is gonna kind of leak into what we see with the Batman, especially the grittiness, the darkness, just from all the trailers we've seen, the corruption. I think there's a scene in the initial teaser where like the cops are like surrounding Batman, and it looks like he's like at odds with somebody. And I think it's definitely gonna play into police corruption for sure. And I thought what was interesting about Year One is touching on Selina's like initial journey as Catwoman and her kind of like wanting to be seen and be heard, and her getting into the cat burglaring, and at the same time that Bruce is rising. I think that's going to be interesting to see on film, because I think from the last trailer we saw, it's very, very much Selina's playing a large role in this film. And I think Zoe Kravitz is great. She's one of my favorite young actresses, and I'm really excited. It seems like I get the feeling already that her and Robert Pattinson are going to play off each other really well. And also I think Jeffrey Wright as well as an outstanding actor. I think the relationship with Gordon and Bruce is going to be huge here, especially that initial teaser where you could tell that Gordon trusts Bruce. And I think from Year One in this animated film, we see that trust develop. And I think it's going to already be established in the Batman, which is maybe they might have a flashback or two a little bit, but I think it's good to have that bond established clearly. So.
Nice, well said. I think the similarity here, I think, is the parallel. You guys already touched on it, but Year One in the Batman is that realism. That realism here, you're not going to be dealing with like the supernatural. You're not going to be dealing with these like super powered characters. The main bones of Year One is like that realism where it's highlighting Bruce's struggles internally rather than some of these big bads like Joker and Two-Face, which I'm sure will be coming down the road. But this is going to be about Bruce versus like systemic corruption. Bruce versus those public authority figures. I think that's going to be a huge role here. And you touched on it, Matt, and I'm really happy you said it. But that's going to play big time into the Riddler's motives a lot here, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Like Bruce is going to be torn between a corrupt Gotham City Police Department. Everything going on with his like the big bads and then the Riddler. It's going to be a lot of fun for sure. It's going to be a lot of fun dynamic there. Like I said earlier, like I think we're going to see Robert Pattinson's Batman as a super flawed hero. Like, he's not going to be this amazing crime fighter. I think we're going to see him kind of rise to the occasion, probably in like the second film and so forth. But I think we're going to see a truly flawed character. I expect Robert Pattinson to get his ass kicked at some point. I think we're going to really humanize him in a couple of different parts of this film. And you saw that in Batman Year One. And I agree, though. I think there's definitely more similarities here compared to Mask of the Phantasm. And I hope it's true, because that feeling of dread, you know, that like super flawed hero, that feeling of a super flawed hero doing the best he can with almost seemingly impossible odds. That is what I hope to see from the Batman. That would be a lot of fun. Let's grade it and final thoughts. Loretto.
Yeah, so immediately, I mean, no offense, 'cause I actually like Ben McKenzie as a live action actor, but that was the first thing I noticed when he started talking, and I was like, I don't like this Bruce. And, you know, in his defense, it's hard to follow Kevin Conroy, who, I know, Dives, I know how you feel. A lot of people would argue that Kevin Conroy is the GOAT, and it's clear when you compare these two voice portrayals. He just didn't do it for Bruce for me. It almost takes me out of it a little bit, but Bryan Cranston's great. And what's interesting is, as much as I agree with you about the corruption thing being done better here, Dibes, I feel like everything else that Nolan peeled from Year One and pulled from it, I thought Nolan did it better. Like the sonar with the bats in Batman Begins, and the bats fill up the building to have him escape. I thought that was done a lot better in Batman Begins.
Oh, no,
to an extent,
not to cut you off, Lo, but that was in The Dark Knight, I believe, that the sonar thing.
that was in Batman Begins.
No,
Was it?
yeah, it's,
No,
it's
it
when
had to
he's
be
like
Dark Knight.
escaping the water place.
Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha.
And then also what's interesting, it's not exactly the same, but similar circumstance where the climax of Year One, we see him save Gordon's baby, and then in The Dark Knight we see him save Gordon's son from Two-Face, and I thought that dynamic was done a lot better for the Dark Knight film. So I mean, it's just one of those like things that, you know, I'm not saying what Year One did was bad, but it's just as far as maybe it's just Frank Miller's story and a lot of his style here. It was a little bit like too much of him. As much as he nailed some of like the best parts about Batman, I think there was a little bit too much Frank Miller's gothic, weird, you know, noir style. That's something that he loves, obviously. And I think in a thing like Sin City, that's like his own baby. But when you put your own take on a character, it almost kind of changes it to a whole different thing. And that's my only issue with Year One. It's just a little bit too much Frank Miller for me. I'll give it like a 6.8.
You're the worst. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's a really decent film. It's not a film that I always go back and rewatch over and over again. It's a movie I would watch like yearly, and I just wish they would have done a little bit more for Bruce's character, of like be a little bit more compelling. And I wish that they had a different voice actor. I mean, not to blame on Ben McKenzie, he is a great actor. I just thought he was just miscast. I mean, yeah, you can. It's difficult to top like Kevin Conroy's voice, but the beauty thing is, if you're voicing the character Batman, you got to take the character and make it your own and not try to like mimic their performance. That's the key thing about them when you have a shoes to fill in when you're playing an iconic role. And I love that the fact that we got more in depth with Jim Gordon's character, and I thought Bryan Cranston, he stole the spotlight in my opinion. Love how they explored the gritty noir of Gotham City and seeing the corruption and all that stuff. And then it's really more of an adult film, and then a little bit of a PG-13 vibe. This is not something you would show it to your 10-year-old, but overall this is more like a 7.5 out of 10. It's a really decent film.
What about you, Formal?
So, like I said earlier, like I think like the loyalty to the source material has its ups and it definitely has its downs, similar to what like Lo was saying in regarding to just the Frank Miller isms. I think like when it's obviously looking at the comic, like the first person narration, I think that works really well because like Miller's trying to get us more into the minds of these characters. In the film, I'm very glad that they did not do that in the Nolan ones because I don't think it works all the time. And then on top of that, similar to what you guys saying and with Ben McKenzie, he doesn't really fill the Batman character very well, even though like Cranston does, like I've already said, an amazing job. And it's just it does take me out of it a little bit. I do love like the bits and pieces that really are Batman. Like we've talked about him being humanized. I mean, similar to a Phantasm, you see like I think like when he like first like comes back to Wayne Manor and he's like wanting to like bring Alfred or not, and he's like bleeding everywhere. You see like footprints of blood and everything. Like that's something that you don't see in most Batman films. But like there are moments like that that are just so great. But then there's other bits that just aren't. And it similar to what Lo says, the Frank Miller stuff just doesn't work 100% of the time. And I think that it does bring it down a little bit for me. And frankly, yeah, I think like I'm in similar to Lo in that I would say a 7 out of 10.
That's where I'm at too. I'm at a 7. That's what I gave it. For me, it's got a lot of interesting concepts. It's got a lot of interesting concepts, but I just want more. Like it left me wanting a lot more.
It's really short.
It is short. It ends like Catwoman. I love Catwoman. It is a good stepping stone. It is a terrific stepping stone to Batman. But as it, just looking at it, Batman Year One, it's about a 7. It's about a 7. There's not that much memorable about it, other than for me, Gordon and Batman and that relationship is really rewarding for me.
One other thing that didn't work for me was like the weird, like I guess time, like it just like hopped around, just like, oh, here's instances in time where these characters are interacting, where incidents are happening, and there's not really much of a connection between the time points, and I was just like, okay,
Yeah,
That's a
that
good
works.
point,
Not
Formal. It was
really-
very disjointed. Like
Yeah,
the way
I
you're
agree.
pacing it.
100% agree.
It's like March. Okay, this happens, and then April. Wait, what? Like,
Oh, we go
what
back to
happened
April.
between
We
then?
go back to March.
and that works
April,
like
June,
in
blah,
like
blah, blah. Like,
comic books
it-
because you have like what do you call it, like issues where here's
Panel?
one, okay,
Yeah.
this one's
Right.
like this one happens in March, and then this one, okay, this one happens in August. In film, it's not cohesive.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think we're going to get any of that inner dialogue type of stuff in the Batman, just like we saw here in Year One?
I don't think so.
Not as much, I hope.
But, all right, so do you think Gordon will have just as big of a role as Batman in the Batman?
Well, like I said before, that there's a reason why that we're getting the Gotham PD show. You're exploring more of Jim Gordon's story than the Batman story, even though it's taking place during Year One, and Batman is present in Gotham during his first year of crime fighting. So I think he's still going to have a supporting role, but I don't think he's going to be like the center focus, like jumping back and forth to Batman and Jim Gordon. If that makes any sense.
I have a vibe. I have a vibe that Gordon's going to have a huge role. Who is the actor playing Gordon in the Batman?
Jeffrey Wright.
Jeffrey Wright has possibly
Phenomenal
one
actor.
of the best voices in Hollywood, period. Like, wouldn't that be kind of like a disservice to not have him do some inner dialogue in the Batman?
I'm pretty sure he'll have a lot of heavy dialogue and explore the relationship between him and the Batman. I'm pretty sure they'll touch on that.
I think this is on it. I think that relationship, that parallel between Gordon and Robert Pattinson is going to be Bruce Wayne is going to be just a massive part of the Batman. I think that's where this is going.
You know,
I mean,
as
they
much
gotta
as I
fill
like,
2 hours 50 minutes with something.
as much as I like Jeffrey Wright, though, I think my only issue is that it might take away from this iteration of Batman. And I think that for its first one, like being like this whole new version of Batman, I think we do need to spend that time with him as well, though. You know?
I agree. Because you don't want to lose focus on the Batman character, because the whole point of it's a psychological character study with Batman. That's something that has never been done in live action before.
So here's our grades. Mask of the Phantasm got a 96%, and Year One got a 70%. Did we get it right, Loretto?
Oh yeah, well, 100%. It's apples and oranges, and not that Year One's a bad film. It's just better storytelling in Mask of Phantasm, and honestly, like you've been saying, Dibes, it's one of the best Bat stories, period. They just nailed it in '93. It's incredible, and it still holds up.
What about you, Matt? Did we get it right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Lo. I mean, yeah, sure, the Batman Year One is not like the most like constant rewatchable, but I mean, I just thought that the Mask of the Phantasm had a better story. It's a little bit more emotionally compelling than Batman Year One because we kind of didn't really get a lot of the story with Bruce Wayne enough because I feel like that Jim Gordon kind of stole the spotlight.
What about you, Formal?
Since I've been talking a lot, I'll keep it short and say yes. And I agree with what you guys said.
I just want to say we have Christian in the chat, and then we have Gabe. These guys have been picking on me for literally the last like 2-3 years about Mask of the Phantasm. Fuck you, Christian. Fuck you, Gabe. 96%, baby. Let's freaking go, man. They know how to put the knife in and twist it because they know how much I love Phantasm, man. It's to this day one of my favorite all-time animated films and Batman films. So 96% I think is right on it, and I think I do agree. 70% is solid for year one. Not a bad film, but just something I want more. I want more. Let's wrap it up, guys. We'll start with Formal. Where can we find you, man? What do you got going on?
I got this obviously. I'm looking forward to rewatching the films that we're going to be doing for this. But also, I will be watching. What's that? The Come On tonight, and hopefully I'll have that analysis out this week. And we have the Oscars apparently coming tomorrow, so I'll be adding more to that list in the next coming weeks. But yeah, and anyone, if you want to reach out on any of the socials, that on the gram, Twitter, Facebook, yeah, just reach out. I'm willing to talk.
Awesome. What about you, Matt? Champ.
Yeah, I'm the champ. Thank you. 3-time champion, baby. And this has been a fun time talking about the Batman, and I'm open to come back to continue the journey to the Matt Reeves' Batman. And in case you guys who are watching, keep an eye open for those ticket sales for that fan screening event for the Batman IMAX, because the ticket sales will drop around 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I'm going to be on that 100% in getting those tickets because I'm just surprised that they're going to show this by the first day of March, a few weeks before the film actually comes out, which that's insane. It just shows you that they have a lot of confidence that this movie's going to crush it. So if you want to reach out to me, just go to my Twitter pages at MattWyatt651. I have a link tree in the bio where you can find me on Instagram, and then you can check out my letterbox where I just do my movie reviews. So overall, I had a blast.
Matt Wyatt is triple champ in our movie trivia, and I'm going to announce not this Friday, but the Friday after that, it will be Harry Potter trivia. Potter trivia going down.
Oh, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah. What about you, Lo? Go ahead, man.
This is completely off topic, but I feel like the Buffalo Bills in the early 90s, kept going to the Super Bowl but kept losing because how many 9s have I had in trivia? Anyways, also Formal. I know I'm so salty. Formal. I love that you're saying Come On. That's in my top 5. One of the best films of the year. I'm excited for you. Anybody that wants to talk shop, talk film, and just shoot the shit, follow me on Twitter at Marcellus Durden or Letterboxd. All my reviews are there. Once in a while I tend to word vomit and spew stuff about films I've seen, and we got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Half of our Suit Up Geeks are actually guesting on Mr. Zach Goler's show tomorrow. We're doing an Oscar nominations reaction. That'll be cool. Check us out on YouTube at Zach Goler. We are also doing a Jackass review tomorrow on this channel. Please check that out. Jackass Forever was hilarious.
I agree. Oh my god!
In the pandemic, I think the world needs a little bit of Jackass, man. We need to laugh.
I agree.
That's
we definitely need a laugh, especially with Jackass, because this is a film that hasn't been we haven't had another Jackass movie for the past 10 years, and then when we're in the middle of the pandemic and everything that's going on in the world, we just want to sit down and go to the theater with a crowd of people and just laugh our ass off and watch them doing one of the stupidest, dumbest shit stunts and practical jokes, and just have a great laugh in the theater. And that's what Jackass Forever did.
Formal?
I will say the Kobe cameo on Jackass was great. I will say that.
I'm gonna have to talk to you offline. Yeah. Overall, though, where am I? Well, oh yeah, we're doing a Jackass 3 tomorrow. And also this Saturday on this channel, we are doing our rom-com draft, which is gonna be fantastic. I'm hoping this is my last chance. If I don't win this one, I'm not getting into the tournament next month. But tune in. It's gonna be a rom-com fantasy football style draft. We got some wonderful new creators. It's always awesome to see new faces on this channel. That's gonna be a lot of fun this Saturday. Please mark your calendars.
I can't wait, man. I have my top 40 ranked right now, but we're doing 6 rounds, so I need to add to that.
Damn.
No doubt about it. So
I thought you guys do like 5 rounds, so now you're doing 6. Okay.
I know.
It depends on the field,
That's
though,
good.
Matt. Like, I think for best picture and for like
Rom-com though, that's
it's deep.
that's a hard one to do 6 rounds for. I'm gonna admit.
Well, I don't know about you, man, but it's pretty deep. That goes pretty far if you really, dig into it. So
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're all good.
I mean,
there are some great rom-com movies.
Yeah, I'm not trying to
Especially,
deny that.
especially R-rated. Especially some of the best R-rated rom-coms.
I was just gonna say I can do 6 easy, so that's why I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
I've got Boba Fett fever, man. I'm so psyched for Wednesday, man.
It is
so
going to
psyched.
be nuts. I mean, is this going to be
cannot
Avengers Endgame level event in this finale? Are they just going to bring everybody in? Because in the last episode, it was just full of Star Wars legacy characters. He's just going to bring everybody in.
I hope so. Yeah, Bosk is definitely in play. That's going to be awesome.
How are they going to make they already brought in they are in the last episode they swung for the fence.
Oh,
they just brought everything, which I'm not complaining about.
Oh, I'm not complaining either. I mean, the last 2 episodes have been like a banger, even though that this was not really a Boba Fett story. The Mandalorian just hijacked it. But even though I'm not complaining, I still love those 2 episodes. They were top tier in the finale. I'm a little nervous and excited at the same time. But this is probably going to be a finale that we're all going to talk about for the next month or 2.
Yeah, so we'll be doing a review 8 p.m. East Coast time live. I'm a little worried about Robert Rodriguez. Little worried. That's sorry, though. I can't not say that. He's directing the finale, and his 2 episodes have been awful.
I think he's gonna show off a little bit here, in my opinion.
Save the best for last, I guess. All right, thank you everyone for watching. Please be sure to smash that subscribe button here. Hit the like button if you love the Batman. We'll be back for 7 versus Zodiac, which is gonna be a slugfest, man. That's gonna be a ton of fun. We might need to just make this a full-blown versus, because those are 2 films for me are some of the best of all time. So that is going to be a ton of fun. Check us out on Twitter at the Suit Up Geeks. Follow my man Loretto at Marcellus Durden. My man Matt, I can never do it right. Matt at 51, and he is the Formal Review at the Formal Review. Thank you everyone for watching. Stay awesome, everybody.